Is Valorie. I'm with the Wintu tribe of Northern California, and I wanted to give you a little preview about neuroscience, a way in which we can better understand how we learn and how to help students learn. So, to start, I was hoping we could think about a time when you remember when a learning experience at school really resonated with you. You felt connected to the experience and you felt like you really learned something. What are some words that would describe that experience? Write one of those words in the chat. Feel free to hit pause in the video so that you can connect with your members about what are some of those words that are coming up in the chat. So neuroscience is all about connections. So to help students create connections, we need to understand that connections to the neurobiological processes of the brain gives you meaning. Connections to our own lives, experience, and cultures gives you value. And connections to the larger world through the process, problem solving, and through content-focused learning gives you purpose. Once again, this is just an overview, and I have, if you want to reach out to me for more details about this, I have a lot of resources for this, and a lot of this is taken from Dr. Arwood and the neuroscience from the University of Portland that they're doing a lot of work on, so I'm happy to provide more. This is kind of just a preview of how we learn. One of the main things that neuroscience is saying is that we know what we see. So this is a cute little comic strip. Zach, obviously this book report isn't complete. Either you didn't read the book or you didn't understand what the story was all about. You're supposed to draw a conclusion from the story. Poor little Zach's thinking, how can I draw a conclusion when I don't know what a conclusion looks like? So everything is visual with neuroscience. You're making those connections with what you're seeing. So what we know is what we see. So it really focuses on visual language methods. Most children think in pictures and create new ideas through seeing shape and movement. We need to draw and teach them to draw. Drawing is a visual representation of thinking. This is not art. We draw before we write in order to organize our thoughts and refine our thinking. So once again, this is really visual learning. And if you think about how we learn, it's mainly visual. So, and it's also making those connections to something we already know. So when to draw? Teachers, we can draw to explain new learning. Students can draw to explain their thinking, which is all about your cognition. So it's really important to use pictograph drawings and word writing with, or even before you read. This really helps with the brain cells connection. So you can see the section of a stimulated brain versus the section of an unstimulated brain. And to stimulate that, it's a lot of the drawing and cognition going on. So electrical activity in the brain is widespread during drawing and writing. So this is just a visual of how much more your brain is active when you actually use drawing and writing, rather than what you're doing now is just listening to me talk. So we can help all learners see the ideas. What can you draw? So think of things in your classroom or how you learn when you think of directions and expectations, when you think of stories, especially stories when you're creating those images in your mind, the text material, and academic ideas before actual writing. So you can map out a lot of what you're thinking visually, and you can model that with your students, and then they actually can make some of those visual representations of their cognitive abilities as well. Another aspect of neuroscience is that our brains are hardwired for storytelling, which is really interesting since the majority of our native culture is storytelling. And storytelling provides strong neurotransmitters that work and brainwaves that sync during a story. So new information needs to connect to previous acquired patterns and concepts in order to stick. So we open the door to new learning by storytelling. So stories put the whole brain to work. So when I'm telling a story about something, when you're listening to that, you are actually providing new connections, hopefully to acquired patterns, and then those concepts will stick. Once again, you can pause at any time. You might want to pause and reflect on any connections you're making with how you are as a learner, or things along the lines of those, how you visually learn and how your students have visually learned. So feel free to pause and tell some stories about how this relates to what you know as a teacher or what you know as a learner, since we're all learners. This also is nice because it respects the lived experience of all students. When you're storytelling, it provides multiple points of access to content and multiple viewpoints. It also validates them as people when they're able to share their story. Culturally responsive learning opportunities are huge with storytelling. Learning to see others and their perspectives. The social aspect of storytelling involves all learners and allows all learners to have a voice, and it makes it more routine. And so it doesn't seem like an extra thing to do if you can incorporate it a lot into what you're doing as a teacher or as a learner. It also helps grow an understanding of we as we hear other stories. So creating context. So stories provide real world context to school learning. Context provides the who, what, when, where, why to any subject or content. And this gives the learner the whole picture. So you want to put the person in the picture. And what I mean by that is when you're talking about a story, you want to put either you in the story or them in the story and make it sure that that cognitive map of what you're trying to teach or what you're trying to learn is provided by the whole picture. And I'll give you an example of that. So here is, why does the world need ants? And as you look at this picture, maybe you could pause the video again and really look and dive deep into this cognitive, I call them maps, but I believe they call them something different. But in my mind, it's just like a map of how a kid is thinking. And so I can really see what they're learning. You can also teach this way. So as you are drawing, you are lively drawing this with the students. You would be amazed, and I don't know if you've done this before, but as a learner, if you start drawing, your students go quiet really quick as you're drawing something. So anyway, just give it a shot and see what happens. And maybe you can meet back with your mentors or anything like that. But anyway, you can pause this video, reflect on how this, I call them maps, but you can call them whatever you want, relates to how you are as a learner and how you could use this in your teaching. So here's an idea for a homework. So it's your turn to draw. So think about a time that weather affected you, for better or for worse. Draw about that time. This is an idea drawing, so quick stick figures. Make sure there's a person, a place, action, and when this happened in your picture story. So this would be a good homework idea. I don't know if some mentors have other ideas for homework this week, but just an option. The real meat of this is you would be able to, in the small group, tell your story about a time that you remembered the weather affecting you. You can show your picture to the group to help them see your story. So it's really important, that see part. The other key in this is, how does it feel to tell your story? And reflecting on that feeling part of like being able to share that with somebody. And also, how does it feel listening up maybe to those stories? So this would be maybe a little extra, but you get the idea as a learner and as a teacher and as an educator, how you really are able to make those connections, like you're really seeing what's happening to make those strong connections. And I will leave you with this cool quote. With respect then to curiosity, the teacher has usually more to learn than to teach. The task is to keep alive the sacred spark of wonder and to fan the flame that already grows. Thank you for your time. If you have any more questions about neuroscience, this was just kind of like a preview, and I hope you took something from it. I would highly recommend trying your best to create more visual representations of cognitive abilities of your students and of you as, of course, the teacher who is task is always to keep alive that spark and wonder.